Ladies and gentlemen, once again, your General President, Jim Hoffa, and please welcome the Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden.
How about that? Joe Biden, Vice President of the United States. Joe. Well, this is a great honor to have the Vice President here. I've known the Vice President for a long time. I knew him when he was a senator. He has always been a friend of organized labor. He has stood up in the Senate. All of his career, he has stood up for working families. And I have to tell my story about him is that I was at an energy conference with the now President Obama. And I was in Lansing, Michigan, and I was the greeter when he came out of his limousine. And I walked up to him, and then everybody didn't know who was going to be vice president. And I was the guy that got out, and I said, "Can I have a moment of your time?" Put my arm around him, and I whispered in his ear, "Joe Biden, vice president." And then he got announced. I take credit for this thing. This is our...
You deserve the credit.
He said, "Thanks." I'm going to give you don't want to hear from me. You want to hear from our great Vice President, Joe Biden.
Hello, Teamsters. Thanks for having me back. I told you, Tommy, if I had your hair, I'd be president now. I wouldn't be fooling around. Look, I would have had a shot, guys, in those primaries. Hey, let me begin like the way I was trained by my mother and father. Thank you. Literally, thank you. Thank you for actually inviting me back, but also thank you, the Teamsters, for being with me every single solitary step of my career. It is not an exaggeration. Where are the Delaware guys? Holler out here. I would not be in the United States Senate. I would not be vice president were it not for 1972, the Teamsters elected me United States Senator at 29, so you guys are to blame, and I love you. Thank you. I also want to thank Jim, thank you for your leadership and for your friendship. Even as the deck has been stacked against organized labor like I've not seen in my lifetime, you've kept organizing, you've kept building, you've kept growing, you've kept fighting for the one thing that labor has done more than anything else. There would be no middle class in America without unions, without organized labor. Now, guys, I'm not going to take long, so sit down. I don't want you to have to stand. I really am delighted to be here, and Tom and all the folks in my home state, particularly John Ryan. We do have some Irishmen in this deal, I want you to know. Tommy, I'm going to see you afterwards, I hope, and don't deny me. Tell them what a great guy I am, will you? You guys have to be my validation here. Folks, look, let me get right to it. The President and I, our whole administration, began from a fundamentally different premise than the other guys do, than our Republican friends do. We believe, we know, and this is not hyperbole, this is a fact, we know that a strong U.S. economy depends upon not only a strong, but a growing middle class. And developing a middle class and a ladder to get to it is and depends upon a vibrant a vibrant, organized labor movement. I don't say that for applause. That is a fact. Now, our Republican friends have a different view. These guys actually believe, they're not making it up, it's not just protect their wealthy friends. They really believe that a strong U.S. economy rests upon an ever-increasing concentration of wealth and power in the hands of a relatively few enlightened guys they think are smarter than we are. How many of you get involved in a collective bargaining, sit across the table from your business rep? How different is it than 15 years ago? You know when they look at you. You know. They don't think you even know what's in your own interest. It's not just that they disagree with you. They've actually convinced themselves that they know best. That's why. The reason why they've declared war on labor's house is you're the only thing that stands between the barbarians at the gate and them taking it all over. You're the only counterweight. Literally. Think about it. Think about it. What other institution in America remotely has the power to take on this concentration of power and wealth? It's you. They know it. Without the counterweight of labor, there's no one, no organization to stand up for what the President and I care most about. And it's not just jobs. It's not a race to the bottom with the world for the cheapest jobs. It's about decent paying jobs. Jobs that a man or a woman can live a middle-class life on, raise a family on. Jobs that allow you to live in a decent home, in a safe neighborhood. Send your kids to a school that can prepare them to go to college, to be able to take care of your parents in their later years, and have the hope that when you retire, you'll be able to rely on yourself and not have to turn to your kids. Where I come from, the neighborhood I come from, where I grew up, that's the definition of the middle class. Everybody in this country who's willing to work like you do is entitled to get there. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the goal you have had. That's the goal we have had for every American everywhere. And that's what's at stake right now. This is not an exaggeration. That's literally what is at stake. The only difference now is between our Republican friends of 2 and 4 and 6 and 8 years ago and now is, to use a football analogy, these guys aren't hiding the ball anymore. They're making no bones about what they really believe. They're not even trying to carry on the pretense that they support labor. They're not even pretending that collective bargaining is a fundamental, basic American value that even business used to adhere to. They pay no lip service to those things anymore. They don't have to pretend anymore. Ladies and gentlemen, they're just straightforward showing everybody the ball and say, come and try to take it. There's nothing that they can hide behind now. They've undertaken the most direct assault on organized labor, not just in your lifetime, but since the 1920s. Literally, not figuratively. Historians are going to write about this era and whether we win or lose in the same way they wrote about the bridge in Detroit at the Ford Motor Plant. The same way they talked about organizing the United Mine Workers in my hometown of Scranton back 100 years ago. They're going to talk about it as one of those tipping points as to where the power resides in America and whether it's a fair fight. Just look around you, folks. I'm sure I'm repeating what you've already heard, but it bears repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating. Look around you. Look at Wisconsin, Ohio, Indiana, New Hampshire, Missouri, Iowa, Florida, Pennsylvania, on and on. Did you ever think that in 2011 you'd be fighting against the right to work for less again? Did you think that would happen? No. Look, folks, they're trying, and in some places they're succeeding in rolling back collective bargaining rights, paycheck deception laws, right to work for less laws, rolling back prevailing wage, eliminating project labor agreements. And the list goes on. And it doesn't stop at the states. In the Congress, Republicans are making you fight to keep Davis-Bacon. They're making you fight to have an NLRB that actually wears a striped shirt and not a black shirt. Ladies and gentlemen, think of this. I know this doesn't mean much in legislation, but think what it says. The Republican-controlled Congress has literally, not figuratively, removed the word labor from the title of the House Education and Labor Committee. Now look, guys, as I said, they're not hiding the ball, man. They're making no bones about this. Don't any of you, by the way, any of you guys vote Republican. I'm not supposed to say this. This isn't political. I'm not supposed to say this. Guys, let me put it this way. Don't come to me if you do. You're on your own, Jack. Look, I've been around long enough that I shouldn't be surprised anymore by the audacity of these guys. You know, they say the very economic circumstances that have crippled and are crippling the middle class, literally, I mean, think about the audacity. They're actually stating, from Wisconsin to Florida, that the economic circumstances have ground down the middle class like no time in modern history are because of labor. You're at blame. You're to blame. They say it's a result of your attempt to fight for a living wage. And, you know, I might add, you're the only outfit. You guys are the only outfit I know who not only organize for your members, you organize for people who aren't your members. You're the only guy that gave at the office on health care. You're the only guys that gave up things for people to have a chance. A chance. So they're blaming you, not Wall Street's unregulated subprime mortgages, not multi-trillion-dollar deficits rung up by the last administration. The list goes on. Think about the audacity. What in God's name did any organized labor organization have to do with the collapse of this economy? I mean, literally, if you're just being an academic historian, completely neutral, it's bizarre. It's bizarre. But that's the case they're making. Jimmy, your logo has been a horse's head. Their logo should be the horse's other end. Look, true. It's true. Guys, this is the most, I repeat, this is the most direct assault on labor in modern American history. For you, for the middle class, for our children. This sounds like hyperbole, but literally, for you and your members, for white-collar workers in the middle class who don't see any relevance to unions to them, for my kids and my grandkids. We can't lose this war. We cannot lose this war. The middle class can't afford to lose it. The country can't afford to lose it. From the beginning, from the day we took office, in spite of the trend against unions, we've stood by our promise. We've done everything we could to make labor as strong as possible because we know, again, we can't have a strong middle class with the declining labor movement. That's why I appointed the daughter of a Teamster to be Secretary of Labor. And now we see what it's like to have a labor department that actually looks out for working people. We've been working like the devil to enforce laws to protect you, to ensure you a safe workplace and a fair wage. Things like $46 million for the Department of Labor in our 2012 budget to crack down on worker misclassification. These guys are sneaky, man. These guys are sneaky. There's two ways to break you. One is to reduce your membership by not allowing you to organize fairly. The other way is to reclassify people to say that they cannot be counted as labor. We know it's a huge challenge that your members face. We don't think companies should get a competitive advantage for misclassifying workers or violating labor laws. That's why we're committed to leveling the playing field by making sure workers are properly classified, enforcing our labor laws. And you see it with the National Mediation Board, which finally changed the rule. Think about what we had. Think how bad this is. It's a big victory that we changed the rule so that you need a majority of those voting to unionize, not a majority of every employee. Under the old way, if a worker didn't vote, that was a vote counted against you. But I mean, think about it. Think about how bad it is. I never thought I'd be standing here as vice president, period. But I never thought I'd be standing here before all of you telling you that a victory was counting only those who voted. Think about it. So the board's made a common sense change. But will have a profound effect on the ability of workers to unionize. The president's also used his executive authority on behalf of working people. One of his first acts in office was signing executive orders to prohibit the use of government funds to block organizing and bust unions. Think of what a meager victory, but think about that. Think about that. The idea that that had to be done, one that encourages the use of project labor agreements on federal projects, which, by the way, benefit everybody, including the taxpayers. We've also increased funding for workplace protection, more inspectors, better enforcement. We've increased funding for job training and unemployment insurance as well. We're looking out for the middle class in everything we do, and that's why one of the first acts of our administration was to make sure that we have a Buy American provision in the Recovery Act. Ladies and gentlemen, that's why we insisted. I know this sounds strange, but we had to insist in the Recovery Act that prevailing wage would prevail in all hiring for the Recovery Act. These guys argued again, okay, we don't like the Recovery Act, but if we're going to do it, let's do it as cheap as we can do it. It's not about a race to the bottom. It's about decent jobs. Ladies and gentlemen, we created or saved 3.5 million jobs as a consequence of that, but guess what? That just kept us from drowning. We made the decision to rescue the auto industry, incredibly unpopular at the time. I won't take the time because I'm your last speaker and you want to get out of here. But I won't take the time to tell you what all these Republican candidates said about that, quote, bailout. Well, no. But look, it turned out. It saved more than 1 million jobs. And the industry has added, just in the last year since bankruptcy, 100,000 new jobs. And guess what? Not only did we save these jobs, but for the first time in 16 years, and my God, my dad, who was an automobile man, is in his grave clapping. For the first time in 16 years, U.S. automakers have a growing share of the economy and the sale of cars in the United States. Americans think American-made cars are better made than foreign cars. Folks. And it's not just auto workers. I can tell you how many of my plants got decimated. We lost the General Motors plant. We lost the Chrysler plant in Delaware. But other plants are opening up again. And what does that mean? It means thousands of you guys are jumping in your cabs with a job to do, delivering parts as well as automobiles to market. And from that, thousands more are now working in the coffee shops that you, in fact, frequent, the diners you go to, the barber shops you guys stop at along the way. This has a rippling effect on people in my neighborhood. We're fighting to end the tax breaks for companies that ship jobs overseas. Think about that. Why should that be a fight? And reward companies that create jobs here. Guys, look. You know, the president, everybody else is kind, and they always make me, Jim, as you know, this big expert on foreign policy. Well, after the president, and it was his decision, by the way, nailed Osama bin Laden, but after that, the president had a cabinet meeting. And he was very gracious, and he had the whole cabinet there, and he said, look, I particularly want to thank the national security team, and he thanked Hillary, and he thanked Bob Gates, and he thanked Leon Panetta, and he said, and I want to thank Joe Biden. And he said something that wasn't true. He said, who knows a lot more about foreign policy than me. It was very gracious of him. It's not true, but that's what he said. And so on the way out, we're walking downstairs to go to a national security meeting. And he puts his arm around me at we've been in my office, where my office turns there, and he said, by the way, Joe, I want you to settle the budget crisis. And I said, okay, no problem. You're going to do the negotiation. I now know how you business agents feel. Because guess what, guys, all kidding aside, I'm now doing for the administration every day since then what you guys have been doing for your guys and women for your whole careers. The president assigned me to be the chief negotiator, just like you get assigned to be the chief negotiator for your unions. I got assigned that job, and it's no different than one you have. Mine, like yours, for the American people, for the middle class, is to get a budget deal that reduces our long-term debt, but that's fair to the American people. And just like you, I look across the table at decent men on the other side, and here's what I hear from them all the time. Bottom line. It's okay. Let's look at the bottom line. Well, just like you, I sit there negotiating to protect and preserve the things that make us a better nation and give the middle class a fighting chance. I sit there and I make an argument for Pell Grants and why we should make permanent the $10,000 tax cuts that allows you to send your kids to college. I'm fighting to make sure that, by the way, I'm not exaggerating. These are literally the issues we're fighting over. These are literally what we sit around, just like you get down into the nitty-gritty when you're negotiating. We're doing the same thing for the entire budget. I'm sitting there trying to save enough money so we can invest in highways and roads and bridges and build our infrastructure. I'm fighting on behalf of the President and the administration to make sure that companies get tax breaks if they continue to invest in advanced battery technology, solar panels, wind turbines, the future, the jobs of the American future. I'm fighting to protect Medicare from becoming a voucher system and to bring down the cost of prescription drugs for the elderly. And let me tell you what they're fighting for. Literally, I'm not making this up. These are the differences we have. It's not about can we reduce the deficit, but how. They're fighting to protect tax breaks, like a $2.7 billion tax loophole that allows people who have corporate jets to depreciate them 2 years faster than an airline can depreciate their jet. It costs $2.6 billion. They're fighting to make sure that hedge fund managers, and by the way, in 2010, I'm not making this stuff up, in 2010, the top 25 hedge fund managers made, individually, combined, $22 billion in their pockets. Individuals, not their company, them. They're fighting to make sure they continue to be, I'd like them to, I don't care if they make a lot of money, but at least they should pay fair taxes. They're fighting, you know how much those guys pay? You know how much those guys pay in their taxes? They pay at a 15% tax rate. You guys, on average, out there, paid at least at a 26% tax rate. Now tell me, I don't care that they make $1 billion, but why should they pay 10% less than you pay in the taxes, in the income they make? Ladies and gentlemen, you know how much that cost in the federal treasury? That's a $20 billion loss. And guess who makes it up? Ladies and gentlemen, we have a fight. You saw the oil companies come and testify about the tax breaks they get. Jimmy, they get $40 billion in tax breaks to encourage them to go explore for oil. Yet this last quarter, in a 4-month period, this last quarter, they made $25 billion in profits. Now, you tell me they need an extra $4 billion of your money over the next 10 years to encourage them to go look for oil. The oil company executives themselves said they didn't need it, but it got voted down in the House of Representatives. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the facts. I'm not making this stuff up. If you didn't, I hope you know me well enough to know I'm straight with you. Ladies and gentlemen, matter of fact, I'm a little too straight. These guys are asking senior citizens to eventually pay $6,000 a year more for the same Medicare they get now. Now, guess what? They're doing it because they have to have the money to continue to allow the average millionaire to get an additional, beyond his already tax rate, an additional $200,000 a year in a tax cut. That means you got to go out and find 6 senior citizens. Actually, you got to find more. You got to go out and find a whole bunch of senior citizens to pay $6 grand more, so a millionaire can get $200,000 more. Look, folks, here's the best example. You know this thing about the Reagan tax cut and all, the Bush tax cut we all talk about? Let me give you a number you're not going to believe. But these are the discussions we have now, okay? In my bargaining, like your bargaining. They want to protect 120,000 American families whose average income is $8.4 million a year, so they can continue to get an additional tax break of $310,000 a year, costing $37 billion a year. That's almost as much as we spend on the entire highway system in America, which is not being repaired. It's going to cost $370 billion over 10 years to take care of an additional tax break for literally the number, it's an actual number, 120,000 families out of over 300 million people. Folks, I could go on, but in the end, what this is all about is the fundamental difference we have in our vision for this country from what they do. The bottom line is this. In the end, this is about jobs. Jobs you can raise a family on. And people look around the country, they're beginning to focus now. They're beginning to see the governors who are trying to destroy the rights of workers. And they're beginning to see what's going on, and it's becoming real clear to them. Not just members of unions, it's becoming real clear to average Americans. They can see this is petty politics. And part of this is just vindictiveness. They see it's a fair fight we're about for basic fundamental rights. It's about jobs. It's about economic growth. It's about what we value as a country. It's literally about who we are as a nation. And people everywhere, Democrats, Republicans, many, and independents are waking up to just how fundamental this fight is. I can't remember a time when the labor movement has been as unified as it is today. There's a famous English essayist from another century named Samuel Johnson. He said, Jimmy, there's nothing like a hanging to focus your attention. Our attention is focused. Ladies and gentlemen, we've seen an outpouring of support from massive crowds rallying in Madison and in Columbus, and Columbus, and from coast to coast. Teamsters stood on the front lines of those battles just as you've always done. It's a fight that we are going to win, I promise you. And the reason it is, it's not just about you, it's about a future that we have to build for our children. Do you know anybody who doesn't care about their kids going to college? Do you know anybody who doesn't dream that their kid will have a better shot to be the guy who not only can drive the vehicle, but can own the company? Do you know anybody who doesn't dream that their kid will do better than they do? Well, folks, it's a fundamental difference in vision. In their vision, you have no place at all. In our vision, you are the place. We stand with you. We stand with labor. Because without you, there is no American dream. There is no possibility. We stand with organized labor because you stand with the people who are struggling to get a chance. We stand with you, organized labor, because with you, we can and will restore the American dream. So help me God. God bless you all, and may God protect our church. Do not give up.